about how I came to work in aging, because I was not headed this way at all when I was young. I'm an only child, and my dad pretty much thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. So I had music lessons and dance lessons, and I was quite artistic and creative, I thought, and I was going to do something very creative with my life. And basically I just fooled around and didn't do too much, and my parents bailed me out every time I got in trouble. Is pretty much how I lived in my 20s. And when I was 28, my dad got very ill. He was 20 years older than my mother, and so she was still working. He had retired, and he started having their trans-ischemic attacks, those small little strokes. He started having those, and about the time I turned 28, he had become pretty much bedridden. And I was living in Colorado with a bunch of other artists. And my grandmother called me and said, "You need to come home. They want to put your dad in a nursing home, and he doesn't want to go, and you need to come home." This was May of 1992. My husband left, he's heard the story too many times. Anyway, it was May of 1992. And wow, that was really a difficult time. I had grown up with a home, a farm, a lake house on Lake Tenkiller. Our farm was up in Eden. A couple of cars, a college education. And when I got home, because of Dad's long-term illness, it had financially devastated our family. And so for the next 2.5 years, I took care of my dad. And I had a 12-year-old daughter. So I saw people who were pre-adolescents and people who were collecting Social Security. That was pretty much the people I saw. And I was taking care of my dad all the time. And it was a 24-hour-a-day job. And I sold our property, and I sold our possessions, and I liquidated our stocks. And his care, it just wasn't enough money. And so about a year into it, I took my dad to the doctor. And all of you PCAs know exactly what it's like on doctor day. You get the patient up, you bathe them, you dress them, you rest a minute, you feed them, you somehow get them into the car, load the wheelchair, drive to the doctor's office, get the wheelchair out. And of course, until you need a wheelchair, you don't recognize that every sidewalk is built on an incline and you have to go up it. And so you get your patient in there, you get them into the doctor's office, you sit for 2 hours, you get into the room, you sit for another hour and a half, he sees you for 10 minutes, and then you do that backwards, and you're exhausted and the patient is sick for another 2-3 days. It's exhausting. I don't care if you're 28 or 88, it is exhausting. And one day, we were halfway through, we were sitting in the doctor's office, and Dr. Kuiper's nurse came in, and she said, "Are you okay?" I guess I looked over. And I said, "Well, I'm just tired. I just feel old and tired." And she said, "Well, come out here, let me talk to you." And so she was talking to me about, now it was Medicare home health, so it was a different thing. My parents didn't qualify for any Medicaid. They didn't even have Advantage back in 1993. So they asked me if I had a preference, and I didn't. And I said, yes. They said, somebody could come out and do a little help and help you out, just for a little while every day. And I said, you are kidding me. Could I have gotten this before? Because I really thought, at one point, I'm going to be very honest with you, I was so tired and in the house all the time. You can get kind of dark, and I know that you've seen this with other families, but my dad only had, at some point he had Parkinson's as well, and he only had control over the remote control TV, on the TV. And he wanted to, if he wanted my attention, which he often did, he would use the remote control to turn the TV up too loud, and it would get on my nerves. And there was a whole cycle of me not getting to be the daughter anymore, basically. And once he was doing that, and I stomped out there, and I grabbed a hold of it, and I bopped him on the head with it. Now, I knew better, and I was really lucky he couldn't get up. Because you don't ever hit your parent. But I knew at that point that I had reached my limit. And it had been about a year. And it just so happened that the next day was Dr. Day. And so Debbie was the nurse's name. She said, I think we can help you out. And so I was so excited. My mom came home from work, and I set her down, and I said, Mom, we have this help, and they're going to come, and they're going to help me out, and this is going to be great. And she said, where are you, Lacey? You're here all day anyway. How come you can't do it? And then there was another argument that ensued. Because I often hear people in our own agency say that about others who are taking care of a family member. And I just realized at 4 o'clock this morning when I was going over what I was going to say, that's why that makes me mad. Because it reminds me of my mom saying that. And I pleaded with her because she had to agree. She was the wife. She had to agree to this, and I pleaded with her, and finally she agreed. And the home health agency sent the first girl out, and it just so happened that this girl was a girl I'd gone to high school with. And she lives in New York now, and we're Facebook friends, and I was talking to her about this a while back, and she said, do you remember that first day that I came to your house? And I said, no, not really, because at that point I had become this just confused haze, just tiredness. And she said that she came to the door, and I opened the door, and she said, hi, I'm Christina. Remember me from high school? I've come to help take care of your dad. And apparently, I flung myself on her and held on really, really tight and said, thank you for coming, thank you, thank you. And it was like inappropriately long. I wouldn't let go of her. And so she came in, and so for 45 minutes, I don't know if it was every day. Quite honestly, it's been a long time. It was 93. So I don't know how often the nurse came, and the CNA actually is what it was. I don't know how often they came, but I know they came enough that I got to sit and watch most of The Price is Right, uninterrupted, almost every day. And it could help me get to the end of the day. And then as CNAs do, because, and PCAs, because this is a lowly paid, high stress job, there is a great deal of turnover. And Christina left, and another lady came, and I too became friends with her. She helped me in other ways deal with my dad's illness, because when you stop being a daughter or a son, you really don't know. I mean, your place just becomes kind of this, like, you're not really the parent, because they never let you forget that they're the parent and that they can tell you what to do, but you're making all these decisions. And in the meantime, I was selling property that was really kind of hard for my family to have to sell, and certainly for me. But all along, my mom's not happy. She really thinks that I should be able to do this because I'm there all day, and she actually has to go out more. And this happens a lot of time in families, and so when this argument ensues, I want you to understand there are two sides. What she was seeing was a very young woman, at 28, 29 years old, who had always been vital, and it was about time she helped out because she'd been just living off her parents for about 30 years, and that is the truth. So, after we sold about everything that we had, there still wasn't enough money to pay for all of the medicines. And, you used to have to pay a lot more than you do now. And the people I work with get medicated so they don't have those payments, like like others who kind of fall through the cracks do. But another lady came to our home, and she was actually closer to Mother's age. And she was probably, 8 years younger than my mom, but she befriended her. And my mom had been angry for so long because of my dad's illness that I was really happy about that. And then something happened that often happens with a home health. The PCA or the CNA decides to leave and go to a different company. And they want to let you know. Because, they want to take you with them. Because that's important to other providers. And we all know that happens, and that happened in my situation. And when that happened, I looked at it from a different point of view. I like the management of the company. And my mom was looking at it from a very detailed point of view. She liked this employee. What I didn't understand at the time, because I had never been faced with it, was that this employee was grooming my mother. And so my dad's illness became worse, and in the end, he went to the hospital on, it happened to be Labor Day. The thing my dad said that happens to you when you go to sleep at night, if you can't walk, or you are blind, or you cannot hear, you don't dream like that, you dream like everything's normal. And so he woke up, and even though he wore adult briefs at that time all the time, he forgot that he could not walk, and he thought he had to go to the bathroom. So he got up. Well, my mother and my daughter were visiting my aunt, who was also dying. It was my mom's husband and her sister, and that plays into the story quite strongly pretty soon. And so my dad fell, and I didn't hear him. Because when you work like this every day, when you all do what you do every day, I know you just die when you go to bed, because it's physically and emotionally very strenuous. And that's what I did, and I didn't hear him. And I didn't find him until the next morning. And I got up, and I kind of stumbled around, and I was on my way out in the hallway, and I could hear my dad calling me, Kelli, Kelli. He'd been calling my name for hours. And he had diabetes, as well as all this other stuff. And so he went to the hospital, and he passed away from gangrene. They could not do surgery, and he had laid on the leg for they estimated it was for several hours. But during that time, he stopped talking at the hospital. He wasn't really thrilled to be there, and he could be that way. And so he had gone for a very long time without talking. And then it was my birthday, October the 8th, 1994, and it was a Saturday, and OU played Texas. And my dad had played football for Oklahoma In-Homecare, which was OSU, so he was definitely on Texas side every year. And I was on OU side, although I didn't graduate from there. I had graduated from KU, but it was just a good thing that my dad and I did together. And I thought, he's in the hospital. This might be the last time we get to do this. So boy, I rushed up there, and we started watching that game. And I believe that Texas won that year. He hadn't said anything for a couple weeks, and halftime came. So he turned to me, and he said, well, happy birthday. And it was as clear as if he'd never had a stroke. I was like, wow. I said, thanks, Dad. How old am I? And he goes, I think you're about 26. And I said, I think you're right. I was 34, I think. And he said, who's that woman over there by the door? And I looked over there, and there was no one there. I said, what does she look like? He said, well, I guess she's a nurse. She's all in white. And I said, I don't think, Dad, there's no one at the door. Do you think it's the Grim Reaper? My dad and I had a very open relationship, and we talked about his death quite often because he couldn't talk, Mom could not talk about it. And so he said, well, I don't know. But he said, there are some things I want to talk to you about. So he talked to me about some things family-wise, and then he said, I want you to go into public service. I don't think you have a head for business. And really, I made a huge math mistake out here a while ago, and so we know I do not have a head for business. Thank goodness Tam Hannah's cleaning up my mess as I'm just chatting with you. And I didn't really want to do that because I knew that it was low pay. I was like, well, PCA work is low pay. Well, okay, it's not that low. Being that I had a college degree, it was going to be pretty low pay. But he was just insistent. And so finally I said, okay, fine, yeah, I'll do it. And I was thinking, I am never going to do this. So we watched the rest of the game, and after it was over, my mom and my daughter came, and my mom said, hey, birthday cake's out in the car. And if you've ever been to Muskogee Regional Medical Center, you know that the parking lot's 3 miles from the medical floor. And I said, okay, well, I'll go get it. And so I went out and got the cake, and when I came back up, I passed the nurse's station. And I said to the nurses, hey, come on back down to the room, here's birthday cake we're going to eat. And they wouldn't look at me. And I knew my dad was dead. And he was. Sometimes I don't cry, but sometimes I do. And you're going to see me cry a lot today, so this is just the beginning. Okay, I'm all right. Okay. So, he died on my birthday. And 7 days later, my aunt died. And my mom went to a deep depression. Remember the CNA I told you that had been grooming my mom? She continued. And my mom had worked for the doctors in the laboratory there in Muskogee for 40 years. And she came home one day and she said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to retire. And I'm going to do my profit sharing, and I'm going to go into business. And I'm using only a first name here. I'm going to go into business with Shirley. And I said, what? You don't have a head for business? And she said, yes. Yes, I'm going to go into business with Shirley. And so a long story, very short, is that Shirley and her 2 sons took all of my mother's money. They got her to they got a loan from one of those predatory lenders using my childhood home as collateral, and I had to watch it auctioned off. But I believe that certification and making PCAs and CNAs a profession would fix a lot of that. I believe very strongly in that. It's my personal opinion. This is me talking to you today. This isn't me talking to you right now. This isn't about me representing any entity that I may work for. I believe that expecting professionalism leads you to a level that those outliers like Shirley and her 2 sons fall off. And they in that store that they purchased, it was called a Pick and Pack in Enterprise, Oklahoma, in case any of you know what that is. It was there. They had a drug making situation in the back that my mom didn't know about, and it scarred her lungs forever. She ended up in the hospital, almost passed away, and they went to jail. They did go to jail. And the predatory lender took my mom's house, and about 4 years ago, she received a check for $500 in some kind of class action suit. And she got $500 for the house. But the taxes were never paid. And so the story wasn't over until the spring of 2010. I was sitting at work one day, and my mom called me, and she was very embarrassed about what happened to her. She was very depressed, and it can happen to anybody. My mom went to college, she's a college graduate. Does it really matter how smart you are, how much money you have? If you're vulnerable, it can happen to you. So it's kind of a cautionary tale. But that's why I advocate for PCAs, because I do believe in you. A bad thing happened to my family, but I believe there are ways that we can work towards not having that. And I believe that hopefully you you all learned today how to speak up for yourselves and be your own voice and make one voice together. So that's really all I have to say about that. I think what we're going to do is take